Computer. Hi everyone, it's Emma and Shannon here, and we are going to be talking today about mid-year enrolment. So we've got some really exciting things planned for starting in January, and we just want to come and share these with you, but also talk about this whole idea of starting new classes halfway through what most of us would deem the academic year, and why this is sometimes a good fit for for our teens. Shannon, can you start off by telling us why this could be a good idea?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. First of all, I just want to say hooray for everybody who has made it to the mid-year break and is still ready to continue, ready for a little break. I think we all can agree that we're all ready for a little break, but with eyes on what is the next step in your home ed journey. So sometimes a lot of teens and even younger kids, but we're going to focus on the teens, we're in this place of really trying to help them find their motivation. There's a lot of pressure for what are you going to do when you grow up now that they're in high school and that type of thing, and that they need to have things chosen and career paths, ironed out with everything decided. And that really, I think that that's not the way it's meant to be. It's not natural. I can remember just from post high school to through the end of university, I think I changed what I wanted to do 3 times. And that was after after I was done with high school. So so just this idea of helping kids find their motivation for what they're passionate about, what they want to continue learning, or what they need to focus on in order to meet those requirements for higher education or vocation, or what they're learning, what they're focusing, that what they're heading toward. I'm
Yeah,
stumbling over my words, sorry. So, and another reason there is to get unstuck. So this is often a time of year where everybody's thrown up their hands and said, I don't know what to do. We're stuck. We've got to figure something out. And that's a great time to do a number of different things. It might be just changing the curriculum, realizing that that new shiny sparkly curriculum that you bought that you thought was just going to do everything you wanted it to do didn't quite fit well with teen A, right? And so so you're having to rethink that. It could be that they just that your student just needs a different perspective, somebody from a different angle who understands the subject, being able to speak to that in a way that will help them get unstuck in a way that maybe a parent, if it's not their subject that they're really good at, will be able to help with, and that kind of thing.
that's
And
something.
that Go ahead.
Yeah, that's something that we have found for all my children for years and different ages as well. That very often we will change curriculum, we'll change our tact after Christmas in
Yeah.
January. We'll have started something and I'm like, this is not a good fit for whatever child for whatever reason. Either that it's too hard for them, or it's too easy for
Oh,
them,
it's too
or
easy.
it's just not
It's not
working for
interesting.
them.
It's not engaging them.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
engaging them, and we'll just do a switch around. And it's the number of things that we've started in January has been quite a lot. Most of my
Yeah,
friends are
sometimes
on
it
a kind
is.
of a January to January track with different curriculums.
Yeah, and that totally happens. At our house, math was always the one that we would be kind of pulling our hair out by January, going, we all the review information, we've succeeded in that, and now we're in that part of the year where it's learning new information in maths and sciences. We're past the review, we're now into uploading new information, and kids really either there have been gaps in learning in the past that need to be filled, or they're just stuck because it's new and it's a lot to onboard. And so that's where we really begin seeing um, those kids that are rising into the next level, and those that need to kind of stay where they're at, or even maybe even take a step back,
Yeah,
that we misjudged things as parents, with the choices we've made, and we need to move them around. And there is absolutely, first I want to say, there's no shame or judgment in taking that to account and saying, you know what, the best choice for now, which will support you the best in the future, is to step back a little bit and make sure, especially like in maths and sciences, to step back and make sure you understand the basics
Yes.
really well and then be able to build on those. Because the time you get into the GCSE exam, if you don't have those basic skills, and I'm going to let you here in a second define basic skills, because that would be where you're at. Then but from a parent's perspective, you're realizing your kids are stuck, finding the places they're stuck, and then making the decision, should we step back and do something to fill in the gaps, or do we just need like a change in perspective, a new tutor, a new curriculum, a new something to approach this and find success? Because really things should be easy plus one, right? And if they're not, then there's a little bit of tweaking that needs to happen. So what are those things, especially in maths and sciences, that would be the places that you want to make sure you have that firm foundation before you're moving into these GCSE categories?
So I think one of the things to note with, I think specifically with maths, when you're coming to do GCSEs, or if you're doing something higher maths, A level maths, you at these kind of transitional moments with the curriculum, there's often a sharp incline in
Mm,
difficulty. You'll sometimes notice it depending on this maths you've done. I think a lot depends on the maths you're doing in those early high school years, and then you have this sharp incline up into GCSE maths. And again, so often you'll hear just even in schools in brick and mortar schools. I remember for myself when I started doing higher maths in the Scottish school system, being warned there's a huge jump up from what we had been doing to the higher maths, and it's the same with if you're doing GCSE to A level maths. It's a massive. There's these
yeah, it's a
big
big jump.
leaps, and and I think what can be off-putting and what can create a lot of anxiety is for families and for teens who have been actually okay. They've been pottering along and they've actually done quite well, and then they suddenly have this jump up,
Yeah.
and it's like they hadn't expected the jump up to be quite so much, and it can produce panic.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might just be that growing pain where they need to kind of wrangle with it, and they'll be fine.
Yeah.
They're
Get
just
themselves organized, recognize they have to dedicate more time to it and be self-disciplined,
yeah,
that piece.
all of that, and then they'll be absolutely fine just to continue and just recognize this has just got harder, and
Yeah.
that's okay. But sometimes there's that, especially if it's a younger teen who's just been
Mm,
really good at maths, and then they come to jump up to maybe GCSE, or they're even if they've done GCSEs a bit younger and then they're jumping up to A level or higher. It's okay for that situation, that kind of pause and maybe just wait another year and
yeah.
then start that again.
Yeah.
Um, but for the GCSE in maths and science, just thinking actually we're going to go back down. We're going to keep going with the basics and just keep building
Yeah.
that foundation and come back into it. We always need to remember that the exams that these kids sit are designed for 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old sitting these exams, some will be able to do that and they'll do well. And they'll do very well. But the majority, even the ones who are really good at those subjects, they're not going to do as well as they could if they waited until they were at least
Right.
16.
Yeah.
And teens who struggle in these areas, you don't need to have them sitting maths or English or science. You don't need to have them sitting at 16. This is why we home educate, to go at our own pace. They can do it when they're
Exactly.
17. They can
Yeah.
even do it when they're 18 or even
Yeah.
beyond if need be,
Yeah.
giving them that time to do as well as they
Right.
possibly
And
can
that time
do.
for maturity, because when you're looking at future life, you know, the qualifications that aren't necessarily um, for university are going to be those maths and English ones. And so, and while those are still for university, if they're not intending on university, then those two, you want them to get their highest scores, not just
Yes.
get it and get done, but get those highest scores. So if you're looking at other exam subjects that might, like, there's so many. If you're
Yeah.
looking at some of the other ones that are really niche, or are in the sciences, or not English, but in maybe perhaps literature, although I would question that one. But some of the other ones that are out there, of course, right now I can't think of any of them, but that they're going to be able to do because they have a natural talent in that subject. Let them do those earlier and then save those other ones for a little bit
Yeah.
later. So that becomes really key with helping reduce the stress. When we reduce the stress, then we're able to find the motivation.
Uh-huh.
And so that becomes really key there.
I
Um,
think as well this point in the year, as we are as homemade mums, we're always kind of looking that little bit further ahead of where we're
yeah,
going, positioning ourselves. This is also a good time to think, what are you thinking about for August? What are you thinking
yeah,
September in the autumn term? Are you thinking about starting GCSE courses? And if that is the case, and this is a time where this is a good few months after January to start thinking about those, just what you said, those basic skills.
yeah.
What are the basic skills, the basic English, the basic maths, the sciences that would build that firm foundation to launch into those harder subjects?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's also a great time to think about exploring languages at the intro level, and then you can explore one or two and see what they like. And if that's something, if there's a natural talent somewhere, then pursue that into GCSE and onward, for those students that are that inclined, but also just being able to do it more like taster and enrichment, and really then decide, all right, this is a subject where you could easily earn um, high marks
Yeah.
for on an exam and that type of thing.
I think
So
it's interesting just to note from when, like, even how many years have I been doing exams? 6 years. We've been in the exams kind of stage, maybe a wee bit more. Even within that period, I've seen a lot more exam centres come online for things like languages. I
yeah,
know, like, over 10 years ago, it was actually really hard for home educators to be able to do GCSEs in
right.
languages unless you were like down near London or something.
Yeah,
But there are more exam centres coming online where is you're able to sit a GCSE in all these different languages, which is fantastic. It's really
yeah.
opening up.
It
Um,
really is. I think that's a great place for us to mention that we have partnered with tutors and exams to be able to provide discounted prices on exams for those that are choosing the UK model. And we also, as within the sciences, the maths, the languages, the foreign languages, and the English, we have excellent tutors that are qualified to teach to those exam specs, as well as biblical studies. If it says IGCSE, they're highly qualified to teach to that spec specifically, and be able to then sit those exams with tutors and exams who have plenty of locations to choose from within the UK. And then because,
one opening in Newcastle, so opening up for
yeah, I think that
Northern
happens
England
in,
and Southern Scotland.
yeah, and then that Newcastle one I think is early 2026. I think they're
Yeah.
meant to be ready for the exam season coming. So that's really good. So a couple other reasons why mid-year enrollment could be the right choice or right fit for your family is our teens need input from others. So both godly instructors and teens that are pursuing a faith-based home education, and that community that can be built that's going to reinforce what you've been teaching them all along at home. Sometimes with teens, we know they get to this place and they start butting heads with parents and with adults, and that's natural. But we also need to give them that environment to think through these ideas, and from places where there's common ground. So we know that they're getting a Christ-centered worldview and a Christian worldview influence as they kind of unpack difficult ideas and navigate different things through the use of literature, in the literature courses, through apologetics, through biblical studies, through all our courses, because all our courses have some opportunity on a regular basis to bring a Christian worldview into the picture. So that becomes really important. I can't tell you how much the literature classes and the apologetics classes have changed our students for the better, that have taken them, they've given them that place to find their voice on really important things for their age group as well as ours, um, in in their, and finding their place in God's history and God's story for humanity and that type of thing. So those have been really powerful in our household, um, along with the other regular learning, and how that all, bringing it all together, has become really valuable for us. And then another one is, there's burnout. This is the season that we start talking about burnout. The days are shorter, the nights are longer. The there's not so many activities that you can go out and do in nice weather. You can't,
Yeah.
all the reasons to stay home and everything, but it also, it brings that breath, um,
Mhm.
finding a new course and that kind of thing. And that's one of the big pulls that I find, um, with families that are larger, even by larger, I can even mean just 3 kids, is that there's not, I know that doesn't seem large to some people. I see you laughing at me. 3 kids isn't large. but but the idea that you have teens, but you also have younger children that you do actually need to be spending much more side by side time with. And your
That's yeah.
teams need to be learning how to learn independently. And
Hmm.
that takes other people becoming involved quite often to learn that self-discipline, to not always be able to think, mom's not really going to care about the due date. I'll get to it, type of thing. So when those things become important, that allows the parents to focus more on the younger ones
Hmm.
while still maintaining a level of higher education and the secondary age group that's really necessary to help build those independent learning skills, along with all the other things we're trying to build and help them sort through in the teen years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would completely testify that when we say avoid burnout, we are meaning avoiding mum burning out.
Yeah, yeah,
And particularly at this time of year when you've got little ones running around and they're not getting out as much, it's an intense time for a
yeah.
homeschool mum
It
in the
really
winter.
is.
It's a really hard season every year. I think every year I start to dread winter, and it's like September,
Yeah.
and it is easy. Your teens are they'll quietly they'll be like, yeah, are you doing your work? Yeah, I'm doing my work, and you're so focused on the crazy little people,
Yeah,
and it just can the being able to have a place you trust for your teens to
yeah,
learn is invaluable,
yeah,
and it will help so many mums. I know for especially when it's your oldest teens who are your oldest children who are reaching that teen stage and you've done everything with them, handing that over to somebody else is actually a really big deal. Um, but sometimes it's the thing that is needed because it will reduce that burnout because you feel the pressure, the academic pressure for those teens, but they're not as demanding of your time as your younger
yeah.
children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's a great partnership that we build here at Arise with the parent and the student and the tutor, to be able to provide that level of education that is the next step up for the secondary age group, with the parents still being involved and in control, but in a role of facilitating, and taking some of the burden of the actual day-to-day and week-to-week topic learning, and just being able to come alongside, and help them learn the self-management and the self-discipline and that kind of thing. And partnering, if a kid does get stuck, then partnering together with the tutors
Mhm.
to get that kiddo unstuck and get them back on track, and find what we need to do to help them and help the family, um, navigate those challenging situations. So those are 5 reasons: motivation, getting unstuck, helping rising students rise to the next level, because that can sometimes happen mid-year, especially in not necessarily in the basic subjects, but in the subjects that they are truly remarkable in, that
Yeah.
there really is an element of inspiration and a cleverness about what they're doing that is more than just your basic student. And then finding that input and community from others for our students, but also for us as parents, and to finally avoid burnout. And the burnout, yes, for the mums and the parents, but also for the kids, because the kids as well are stuck home learning
I
in the
agree.
winter, and they need a little bit of inspiration and outlet, to have places to converse and to talk about subjects that are important, for them to begin unpacking and just pulling the pieces apart and together. So let's switch now from these are the reasons to these new courses that we
Yeah.
have, because we have some really fun and exciting new mid-year courses that might help in any of these 5 categories, for your family to be able to just find that inspiration or toy with a subject and that kind of thing for a few weeks, and at the same time still be preparing if they're looking toward GCSEs, still be preparing for GCSEs, or being able to put them on a high school transcript if that's what they're doing. All the courses are able to do that. And so why don't you, Emma, do you want to start us out with what some of these new courses are while I
Yeah.
get myself reorganized here onto the next things?
So our first class we want to talk about is Old Testament words and wisdom. This is a single semester course taught by our amazing Dr. Ashley Hibbard, who is just, she is such an interesting lady to listen to. If you get a chance, go and look at our podcasts that we've done with Ashley in the past. She always brings such insight and such depth of knowledge and of understanding into the Word of God. So she's put this class together, um, and we talk about words and wisdom. We're not talking about proverbs. It's almost like a dipping a toe into biblical Hebrew. So she's looking at specific words in Hebrew and unpacking the richness of those words and the wisdom that are within them. Because as many of you will be aware, Hebrew is one of the it's sometimes hard to do a direct translation from Hebrew into English. You lose so much of the richness in that translation.
Yeah.
This is also an exciting class because it is a family learning class. Shannon, can you explain what that means?
Well, yeah, so what we wanted to do with this class, because it's really like it's an intro to Hebrew, biblical Hebrew class. So with the bit of writing in Hebrew and learning to speak, learning to what the characters mean and how they sound, and all the elements of beginning a new language are built there. We also know that there might be families where maybe one of the parents wants to brush up on their own Hebrew learning, or they want to learn it themselves new. And it's a great opportunity then to learn something together, with your kids as a family. And so we've set it up so that for a for a regular paid student in a seat in the class, that parents can also join the class, I think for like £20. Um, the specific details are on there. So it would be ungraded for the parent, and that kind of thing, but it would still be graded for the student. And the coursework was there. Dr. Ashley has built this all out to be that pre-GCSE for biblical Hebrew is kind of the idea of the course, because biblical Hebrew is a GCSE course that can be an exam can be sat for, but we wanted to give parents and students this bit of a taster before the commitment of the full 2-year thing. So that's what this little 15-week course is about. It's that pre-GCSE style, but also bringing in words and literature and connecting them through the Old Testament in a way that they learn the words, they learn the vocabulary, they learn a bit of the handwriting, and they learn a bit of the depth of history and the richness of the culture through learning even just a little bit of the language. So it's really going to be a great course.
Yep, I'm really excited about this course. It
Yeah.
sounds absolutely fantastic. Our next course is actually one that I'm doing. It's Pre-iGCSE Maths Year 2. So we've already got a Year 1. This is a Year 2, so it's like S2 level, S2, S3 kind of level for Scotland, but that would be Year 8, 9 for England. And it really is setting that foundation for IGCSE Maths.
Yeah.
The whole curriculum, it's dovetails with the IGCSE. All the things that we do there are the things where the IGCSE leaps off of. So
Right.
we're doing our fraction. Well, the semester one we did fractions and a bit of pre-algebra stuff, and the IGCSE curriculum just follows on from where that kind of
Right.
leaves off. Second semester we'll be finishing off a little bit more algebra type stuff, but predominantly the second semester will be a lot of geometry and a little bit of probability and statistics. This is a fantastic class if you're thinking either you've got a teen who's not just ready for IGCSE, they're a little bit older,
Yeah.
but maths is the thing that they're difficult subject. This would be a
Yeah.
great place to go. I'm really, because it's a small class, we're able to go at a pace that suits the teens in the class, and we can spend more time on those things that are more tricky. And then, but if if you're looking to put your teenager into IGCSE math, start in autumn, this would be a great place just to put that foundation in place. We come back, we do repetition so that to remember, because I know so often teaching teens maths, they'll get it, they'll understand it, and then you'll leave it for a few weeks, and then it's like that knowledge just falls out their head.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of repetition and revisiting. So that's in January, and it is part of a full year class. So you could even start it in January and then pick it up again in autumn
Right. If they needed the full
if
year,
they needed
or
the
if they're
full year.
ready, and you would be able to say in the class if you felt they were ready to move up to GCSE or if they really needed another semester of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
I would even suggest some teens would even benefit from doing it twice.
Interesting. Okay.
Or even starting and then doing 18 months, but then doing the full year again and then starting in 2027 with IGCSE Maths.
Interesting.
It
Okay.
really does build this foundation
Yeah.
that is needed for the IGCSE.
And it's because of that jump in rigor and I don't know, mental ability is the only word I can come up with that comes with that developmental leap as well in that middle teen
Yeah.
age, that 12 to 14. There's such a difference just mentally
Mhm.
and academically between those. And if we get there too early, if we're teaching maths before and it's not in line with that academic or developmental leap, then that's where we end up quite often we're seeing the disconnect with the kids and those that were doing just great with maths, and then they come to this place and they just need to wait to just grow up a little bit
Yeah.
more, and then they'll be able to be right on track with it.
So things like take fractions. So in the IGCSE maths, in the IGCSE maths exam, there is always a question involving fractions.
Yeah.
And but the question that they have in IGCSE, it takes every skill you've done previously with fractions, skills that you would have been doing in primary school with fractions, and packages it in one question.
Right.
So if you understand equivalent fractions, you might understand equivalent fractions over here. You might understand what an improper fraction is. You might understand how to add fractions together, but then it takes them all and puts them into one question. And it's that grouping together of the skills that can be really daunting. The same
Yeah.
happens with ratio. There's always a ratio question in the IGCSE exam, but the ratio question is it's a word problem. There's a problem solving element, so you can do ratios. Maybe you might have done ratios. You might I can understand ratios, but then it becomes when the way it's packaged, it kind of goes up a level. It's more problem
Right.
solving and logic thinking.
Yeah.
It
And
can
breaking
you're
it
like, I
down and doing the
recognize this
basic
as ratio, but I
fractions.
don't understand how to do it.
Yeah.
But it's the same with a lot of these very foundational ideas.
Yeah.
Even things like orders of operation. when you're
Yeah,
manipulating algebraic expressions, you're needed to pull on your order of operations. You'll then be thrown in algebraic fractions. So the principles are the same, but you've now just thrown in a load of x's,
right. Yeah,
and it can produce that panic.
yeah,
So it's all these bits that you might be able to
yeah,
do in isolation, and if those foundational bits are really wobbly, like they're just kind of getting how to go
yeah,
between a improper fraction into a mixed number, then you're throwing in algebra on top of that.
yeah.
That's when it
And
becomes
it's too much. And there's also that repetition, the
yes,
regular review and repetition that will build them into that to be able to get them to that solid place by that year two for the exam because they've had these 4 years of 2 years on at a minimum on those fundamental basics and then beginning to see how you repackage them differently, think a little bit differently with the same concepts to produce something completely different.
yeah,
So yeah, so that's great. Let's move on to all these languages that we've
yes.
started.
There's
We
a
just
lot of
talked about
languages.
words and wisdom, Old Testament words and wisdom, but now
Um,
we have three more languages that we're adding. For right now, we're adding them as at this pre-GCSE Spanish, French, and Latin A, which is the very first of Latin, the very first book. Um, we're doing these in single semesters, and then in the autumn, those will build out to full year courses. But for right now, especially like Latin, the Latin A book, we're going to do that kind of double time and we're going to be using Prima Latina from Memoria Press, and we have Jessica who will be tutoring that for us, and she is amazing, having taught Latin to her own family and having a background in languages. She's suited perfectly to teach this course and is able to take this very beginner basic course, double time it to finish it in a semester, and then allow the students then that are ready to move on to the next course, which I believe is mm, Latina Christiana, I think is what it is. And so that then both of those will be offered in the autumn. But for spring, for January right now, that's the Latin course. So take a look at that and see if that one is something that you're interested in and want to jump on, especially those that are more in the classical model of education and trying to support that and support you as parents in a place that might not be your strong suit. And so we're really thrilled to have added that. We also have Spanish and French from two ladies who are really stand out in their field, in their language. Frida is a native speaker, and Kate has earned her French. She read French at university at Oxford. She taught her kids, she home educated her kids, and at least one of her kids is doing French at Oxford, and her other child is doing Spanish.
she
She
did A
CCs.
levels. A
Yeah,
levels.
A levels, that's right. So she as well is highly qualified to tutor in the subject through all the exams. She can prepare for exams through A levels. We're starting with just the intro to French this semester, so that people can get familiar with her and families can decide if this is a language they want to pursue. And then by the time we get to autumn, we will see how that builds out into IGCSE and perhaps more, but those conversations are still in the works and nothing is solid except for IGCSE. We do know we will be doing that in the autumn. So intro to Spanish, intro to French, and then we have two more what enrichment style courses that we have going on. Do you want to tell us, since you have a kid in the basic cookery class, I'm going to let you talk about it. I hear all the good news about that class, so you go for it.
So we've got basic cookery. So this is just new. We've slipped. It was originally a single semester class, and that single semester was going to be repeated in January. But Oscar has agreed to extend this to be a full semester class with enrolment opening again in January. Oscar has been such a hit with that class. He is
Yeah,
just such a charming, lovely, warm young man, and the teens have responded so well to him.
really have.
And
Really have.
yeah, I've got a child. My son's in this class, and it's always in our household. What's Oscar doing this week with them?
Yep.
And so very often we've had. He started off with kind of starters, and main courses in the last few weeks has been kind of cakey, puddingy things.
Yep. Awesome.
And it's been lovely because on a Wednesday, when I was doing the main courses, we'd have dinner made for us by my son out of after, because it's taught on a Wednesday late afternoon, so it finishes just round about dinner time. So
Yep.
you
They're
can,
popping it in the oven at like, 5 o'clock our time or so.
yeah,
Maybe a little bit earlier, but about that time. And so then it's ready for tea time.
yeah.
And if it needs to hold for a little bit, you can just turn it down, and put it on simmer or put it in the oven or whatever, and it works out great. So we're really thrilled to add that, to turn it into a full year course. What it means though, um, if you are thinking of jumping in January, don't be dismayed because the course will be able for new students to just jump in and carry on if they have some basic cooking skills, like they know how to boil water, even if it's just in a kettle. I think if they can do it and they know basic safety, that they will do just fine in the class, and they'll be able to jump in and just get right up to speed with things without too much trouble, I think. So that one is really exciting that we're able to step forward into the full year course for that sooner than we had hoped. And then the other one that we're really excited about is actually it's a family-oriented, self-paced class, so it's for all ages, and that's the Form Health and PE. And we found this like in October, September, October, I think. And the approach of this program totally, I was like, I want this and I want it now because it's health from a Christian worldview. So when they're talking about relationships, they're talking about them in a God ordained way. When they're talking about self control, they're talking about it in a God ordained way. When they're talking about exercise and why we need to have a healthy bodies, it's because of what God desires us to do as his in our relationship with God to have healthy bodies, to serve each other well, and to promote godly living. And they have done it in such a great way. It's one of the very few courses that we have where it is an American curriculum by Americans, but that's only because I haven't found anybody doing this anywhere in any language, in any country, as well as they're doing it here. And so we've brought it on for families to be able to use. And it's so it's essentially you buy it and it's a lifetime thing. You can have PE and health sorted for your family forever if you want. And then our hope is that by autumn we will have found a tutor for that, to be able to do the live class sessions and to help manage that burden with families that want a little bit more focused community online class time for that class. So take a look at that one. It is absolutely excellent, and I'm really thrilled to be able to provide it to families because there's of all our subjects that I feel like, well, every subject I think it's really important to have a Christ-like worldview and to be bringing that to the conversation regularly. But in the culture we live in, the health and PE, more so the health than the PE in my mind, but both together, it is so vital to what we are teaching at home to our kids right now, that we create a solid foundation of who they are in Christ, who God made them to be, and who we are in our identity, and how we share that with the rest of the world. At home and abroad, wherever we're at. So though those two, that last course is just really, I'm so excited about it. Can you tell?
Yes. Um, I think that brings us now to our classes that we are repeating, well, not repeating, that are full semester classes but are open for midterm enrolment.
Right.
So starting off, both our literature classes, British literature and writing composition classes, can be jumped into after Christmas. So for the year one, we will be looking at Jane Austen and reading Pride and Prejudice. So it's that Georgian literature, and that marries beautifully with British history, which is that
Yes.
Georgian period. So these can, you have this really rich exploration of that whole period from the historical and the literary side of things. It was also Jane Austen's 250th birthday on the 16th there a few days ago. So that is, so yeah, everyone's talking about the work of Jane
Yes,
Austen
that's a
right now.
great course to jump into for a single. That's one of those courses. These courses I feel like fall into that. You need some inspiration, some motivation while you're still getting rich learning. It's not just like, oh, let's do a unit study on fill in the blank.
Mhm.
It's preparatory work for exam level exercises with really um, great literature, interesting and exciting periods of history, as well as really bringing in that element of what does godly living look like,
Yeah.
and how do we move toward that. So
Yeah. And then our year two is C.S. Lewis. So we're doing both Mere Christianity and Screwtape. And again, the year two British history is looking at that modern period in which
right,
Lewis was alive and writing. So again, you've got this connection between the two works. And for the literature class, as Shannon said, that we take the literature and we use that as a scaffold for the well, we use the curriculum for IGCSE English language as a scaffold, and we use the literature to teach to that so that you're
right,
learning to write well. You're learning to read and appreciate and understand what's actually happening and gaining all those skills that you need for English, but through the vehicle of really good quality
yeah,
literature and writing. And we also do poetry in both of those classes that link to those periods.
right.
And we said the history are both open for enrolment as well, so modern and Georgian history as well. Do you want to say anything more about the history?
Um, I would just say the way we do it, sometimes the word contextual trips people up. We look at it contextual British history. So we're taking these two eras and the lives of two authors, C.S. Lewis and Jane Austen, and looking at what life and history was going on, not only in Britain, but around the world. And we do that by looking at other famous people that were alive at the same time Jane Austen and C.S. Lewis were. So we look at world leaders, we look at authors, we look at scientists, we look at religious leaders, humanitarians, missionaries, the gamut. We look at everybody, and then we the goal being that we get to know these people and what they were famous for, and then the culminating project is a dinner party where the student gets to choose 15 people that they've researched and set them around a table, create a menu, so you get a little bit of period culture and that kind of thing. And they do a slide presentation, and within that slide presentation, a piece of what they're expected to produce is to really put on the hats of these famous people they've chosen and think about how would they interact with the person on their left and the person on their right. So if you have like we just finished Dickens just a few weeks ago, a few days ago, actually, not even weeks, just a few days ago, and they did their presentations, which were absolutely phenomenal. But the questions that they were able to come up with thoughtful questions, with just like, you know, you put Nikola Tesla next to Susan B. Anthony, what might they talk about? Because they were alive in the same era. And you look at all these different people and find out, what would be the things they actually could talk about, what would be the things that maybe they shouldn't talk about, there's extreme conflict, or could the student find a way to discuss that topic or to bring a question up in a polite and appropriate manner. So it's really rich, but in a different way. It's not all about battles and wars and dates and that kind of thing. It's really about getting to know the people. It is fairly research based because they do every week look at 3 or 4 different people, and look at a lot of people and then decide who do they want to bring to the table and invite to the party. So I love teaching the class. It's a great way to learn history in a not so boring way, and to make it come alive. So that's the history both. With the modern history, we do look at World War I and World War II, but because C.S. Lewis actually died on the same day that John F. Kennedy was shot, that is where our history stops. And so we stop with JFK's assassination, and so we don't get into the rest of modern history beyond 1963. Okay. And so we've left that for another course another time. But that we will be looking at World War I, World War II up to 1963. And so that's the way that course takes its turn. And then with that one, I give the students the choice of doing um, either a dinner party during the World War I era or the World War II era, because there are so many people to learn about, but they're different if you're focusing on one world war or the other. So that's how we split it, and they can choose, even though we'll give a good overarching perspective of both wars in that era.
That also brings us on to World Geography, which is also open for enrolment in January. And in that second semester, you look at Europe and the Americas. This is another class that, for in our house, has been such a rich class. It brings out so many interesting topics of conversation
Yeah.
and a depth of knowledge about the world that is just so rich and so good for our teens to have. Is there anything you want to share about world geography?
I think just that, it just becomes really, it's one of those foundational courses that is perfect for S1, S2. Although if a student is older than that, they will do just fine because it really is geared toward middle high school, upper high school levels. So any high school level can do it. But the key for this class is it builds this foundation of anchors for them to understand their world when they're looking at current events, when they're seeing the news, when they're talking or listening to a missionary speak at church, or a pastor that's come back from a trip or something like that. They will then be able to have these anchors of knowing a little bit about where those places are, what the culture is like, what the people are like, and hopefully they can find it on a map, because that's part of what we do. We have a map testing, but it's really about learning the important bits of each country. In the full year course, we do, like, I don't know, 200 countries, something like that. Um, and so this is just Europe and the Americas, so North America, South America, and Central America, and all the islands down there. And then we also touch on Australia and New Zealand and Oceania really, really briefly within that. But it's a course that's meant to be a foundational piece to then build your history and your literature and your sciences and all these other subjects on once they get into those upper high school years, because it just lays a great foundation for all of the subjects.
And also Intro to German. So this is a course that's
Yeah.
been a full semester, a full year course, but it's open for enrolment again in January. The way that Bella teaches this is quite modular in nature, so it allows you to jump in the January semester. Bella is just a phenomenal teacher. She is a native speaker. She's originally from Austria, so you're learning from that native speaker
Yeah.
again, which is just lovely. Anything you want to add about German?
No, I think that, it's a great class for a subject, especially for those that want something a little bit maybe different than the norm. There's always the popular Spanish and French and those kind of things, but German really is a vital language in our modern society as well. And so keeping that in mind, and the really unique piece that Bella brings to this, by her own nature, is this idea that when they finish the classes, they will be able to share just basic verses or basic communication and conversation skills about sharing their testimony and speaking about godly things, to others in a foreign language, in German specifically. And so that's a really key element that she's brought to that class that we want to be employing in all our foreign language classes. But she's the one that has started that ball rolling, because it's a natural part of how she has put that class together. So that's really exciting. I know my son probably should have taken that class before his last adventure over the summer. It would have done him well, as would any of the courses, the language courses, because he was in a group of people where it's so multilingual that it was just phenomenal. There was, oh, so many different languages. He had a great time. But that's a story for another day as well. So
That brings us to our sciences. So we do IGCSE combined science, biology, physics, chemistry, and GCSE astronomy. Um, and these are all open for enrolment in January. Again, the way that Hannah teaches all these courses is as a modular form. So the full curriculum is over 2 years. So if you're jumping in January, you'd be starting, and she teaches it's broken down into the different modules that make up those curriculum. And so you would need to do the full 2 years starting from January, do 2 years worth of curriculum to be able to have learned everything to sit the exam. So it's not that you could start it. You could if your teen has already done a lot of the work and it's already done most of the curriculum. They could do part of it, but that understanding that if to sit the exam, you can't just start in January and be ready to sit the exam in
right,
May, June, wherever the actual papers are. Um, is is part of that bigger curriculum, but you can start it in January. And Hannah is an amazing tutor. She's so good. My boys are in her science classes and they actually love it. One of my sons, it's his favorite class.
it's his favorite class.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's so awesome. Yeah. So the way that can work though, as well, is that if you are in a situation where you're bringing your student home and you need to just
Mhm.
plug into subjects that he or she were taking in the public school, then these are the types of courses where you can just jump in and then circle back around to those other modules so that you're able to cover the complete course content, and then be able to coordinate the right time to sit that exam after a proper time of revision, and that kind of thing. So it is a little bit circular, but in the course of things that you get through all of the subjects
Yeah.
or all the modules for the subject.
I think we've covered everything. I
I
think
think we
that
have
is
too.
everything that we have. Again, if you've got any questions, if you're unsure about what is the right course, please reach out to us. There we have some readiness tests that we can send out, and we can just have this conversation. We can send
Yeah.
emails on to tutors about specific questions about their classes. Um,
There are a few other classes though. If I kept scrolling, we are able to, like your pre-GCSE
oh
class.
yes, yes,
And then we can also have students jumping into Art 1 and 2 and My Life Skills class, where we'll be doing CVs and interview skills and that kind of thing. Biblical Studies is another one of those where they could jump in, but they would need to circle back to the
yeah,
front of that course in the autumn. And then Speech and Drama, they could jump in on those. It would be a quick learn if they were wanting to do the exams this year. But if they weren't going to do an exam with the UK Art Award this year, they could take it and then look at exams for next year.
yeah,
And we could just figure that out based on each student. So toward the bottom of the page that we will link to, you'll see these courses where it might be a little bit more conversation between us and the families to be able to make sure that the class is a good fit.
yes.
And so these are also open, and And so it's like there's 23 classes people can choose from for January, which is phenomenal. To be able to think, if you're the parent sitting there listening and you've made it this long through the podcast, and your student is still in public school, and you're trying to find that reason to bring them home, but you're just not ready, you're not sure about making that jump because you're not sure you're going to have all the classes covered, we've got 23 to choose from, that they can jump in and find their feet and get settled into a new way of learning, and being able to do it from home. And we have had families do that in the past. Last January, we had several families. They were making that choice over the Christmas holiday, and not returning to their local school, but making the decision to begin home educating, and we were able to help them navigate that in the newness of everything. And it was a pleasure to serve them in that way.
Absolutely, yes. Um, I think we're done.
I think that's it.
Oh,
So here's where we say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
yes.
And if you have questions about anything, just email us, drop a comment if this is on social media that you're finding it, and that will come back to us, and we'll be able to connect with you and answer your questions. So yeah, so I look forward to seeing many more in our classes in January.
Yes, everyone have a lovely Christmas and a blessed New Year. Thank you so much for
Indeed.
listening. Bye bye.